Good morning, everyone. I'm Beth Berry from Real Green Systems. This is an exciting day because usually I sit in my office and talk to myself. Occasionally I get guests or we talk about what's new in the industry. So this morning I have Bill Nunan, Real Green's CEO. I have Seth Jones and I have Bill Roddy. Seth, and your title is?
I'm the editor-in-chief of Landscape Management Magazine.
And Bill, your title is?
I'm the publisher of Landscape Management Magazine.
And if you've been to any green industry shows, you guys are familiar faces. I saw you last at the Marty Grunder event, which was a fun event. And if we had known the first week of March what we knew now, we would have hung out longer that day.
Yeah, for sure. That was just right before everything went down. But yeah, it was a good event, and Charlotte ended up having a lot of issues with hotels and things like that not too long following that. So I think we're all lucky that we didn't get sick.
We were very, very lucky. So today we're going to start it out with Bill Nunan. I get asked very frequently, what did you guys do at Real Green to pivot off site? How's it going now? And how do you run a software company remotely? Some of it is intuitive, like we do demos remotely all the time, but how do you manage our hosted services, our print solutions? So Bill, catch us up on what you did very early on to get Real Green going.
Absolutely, Beth, and thanks for having me on. I'd love to participate in one of your events. You know, I know you've been leading a lot of these events as we go forward. Hey, just real quick, I'm relatively new to the industry, and first thing I want to say is how fortunate I feel to be part of this industry, given in the aggregate how well it has held through these trying times. But you know, the first thing that we focused on at Real Green was the health and safety of our team, and pivoting very quickly to at-home operations. And we literally did it in about a 48-hour period, transitioning 170 employees to at-home operations across all functional teams. So it was a pretty aggressive initiative. Fortunately, we've been preparing for this for about a month and a half, so we had the infrastructure components to do it. And despite being a software company where it's common for folks to work from home, culturally, Real Green has always been an office-based organization. So it was a pretty big pivot to actually work through that process. But it worked very effectively. And first and foremost, it was very important to make sure we had the infrastructure, the connectivity for folks. We got people at home across all functional teams and immediately started focusing on how we make them effective and productive working from home, and equally important, how do we stay connected as a team? So this is new ground for many of us to work through. So we spent a lot of time sort of studying best practices on how to stay connected, how to follow up with employees, how to tune what they're working with from an infrastructure point of view to make sure that they could be supportive. And fortunately, we had deployed a number of tools and systems to help enable the transition in the previous year. An important piece of that is our own software and services that we offer to help folks, operate remotely at home. So it's been very successful. We continue to operate at home, and will do so indefinitely, given the guidance that we have in the state of Michigan right now, where we're predominantly based. But at the same time, about 3 days after we got folks to home, we also stepped back and said, hey, we want to help the industry. So we spun up a series of initiatives. I asked Beth Berry to lead sort of our customer and market engagement initiatives, and we immediately started working on things like this event that we have going on today, and formulating our impact series and sequence. And the mission was to share sort of best practices with folks on how to pivot to remote operations and operate in a socially distant way, how to use our marketing services and our software tools to operate effectively in that environment. We also focused on lobbying efforts to support the industry. And while in most states, lawn care and certain landscape services were viewed as essential, in Michigan, which is actually our largest state, given that we're based in Michigan, we had some challenges, but we invested very heavily in lobbying activities and trying to mobilize the industry to support that. Unfortunately, we're all back to work here now in the industry. And then general encouragement as well. It was a great opportunity for Beth to interview legends in landscape that have been in the industry for many years and have lived through different economic cycles and get their thoughts having been through several disruptive events historically. So that, again, in a nutshell, was our game plan. Get the team, focused, working at home, protect health and safety so they can support our customers, mobilize a force to help support the industry. And those were really our two big focal points for the last 3 or 4 months as we've gone. Well, we continue to operate as a business, advance our software, focus on some of the opportunities we have. But that's it, Bill.
The time-space continuum has disappeared, but it was like March 4th. I was at NALP's Workforce Summit because unemployment was basically zero and we could not get enough labor to finish the year in a lot of the big maintenance organizations. And on the heels of that event, we had our weekly Tuesday leadership meeting, and you made an offhanded joke that Sherry got the last couple bottles of sanitizer. And I honestly didn't know what you were talking about. Everyone kind of laughed, and I said, what are you guys talking about? I mean, sure, you heard of COVID coming, but I literally went to a Staples in Washington, D.C. and loaded up my suitcase that day after you said that. And then on the 18th, you and I hosted a webinar to talk about what tools Real Green has so that you could immediately pivot off site. So although many of them have been in use for years and years, you didn't have to use it to have business continuity. So what do you think are the leading products that helped our customers right out of the gate?
Well, I think there are examples of how we helped across our broad portfolio of services and products. Our core software is Service Assistant 5, and we have a couple of generations of product in the market, but Service Assistant 5 is a true web-based SaaS solution. So our customers, we have about 1,000 customers that are using Service Assistant 5 today. It allowed them to immediately pivot to at-home operations. So any office-based personnel could move home. For instance, customer support, sales teams, management, they were all able to very seamlessly and quickly, pivot to home because they didn't require any infrastructure investment to operate. They just needed an internet connection to continue to operate there effectively. I think one of the other very important things is this whole theme of going paperless. And there's several examples of that. And I think one of the most intriguing things that's come out of this is, our payments business. We are a payment facilitator as well. And we have tight integration all the way from our customer, CAW solution, customer assisted website, all the way back to our course SA5 solution and integrated payments flow. So customers can make payments online 24/7 and have the transactions flow back into our service assistant solution. And what we've seen over the past 5 or 6 years is that payment utilization has been growing at a rate of about 4% year over year as people become increasingly comfortable in making online payments. And there are things that help, accelerate that, like reinforcing the importance of auto pay, people to sign up for recurring payments, or different billing models like budget billing or installment payments. The very interesting thing with COVID-19 is that we saw utilization in the industry jump close to 10% literally overnight. So a massive shift in customer behavior through that process. That represents, 2 to 3 years of utilization growth, just to illustrate, the change that's gone on and how important these automated tools are to help become paperless, help customers feel, more comfortable paying online rather than having to handle checks and all the complexities of that. Other examples are, our mobile solution, where, now, you can actually, we've always been able to do this, but be able to publish routes through the mobile device to eliminate paper from the system. So we see customers increasingly leaning on our mobile device to drive interaction. And then also a big theme is around our automated marketing assistant, which has about 55 different embedded products that automate certain interactions like after service engagement. And rather than relying on paper, we've seen an increasingly dependence upon the email interaction and the automation that takes place there. So that's another way to sort of become more socially distanced in how our customers engage with their customers through those types of automation. So those are a few examples. we've seen customers also use some of the features that have always been there, but now had an increasing need to do that, like automatically posting production. Rather than having someone audit each production transaction and approve it, you can drive that entire process from our mobile solution and streamline that. And what it does is it accelerates billing and revenue recognition, and it accelerates putting that customer back in the pool for routing purposes. So we've had customers better leverage some of the tools that we've had in place for a while out of the need coming from COVID-19.
That's awesome. It was that same week when you talked about, and you've got a military background. So how long were you in a submarine?
Well, I was underwater some total about a year, but I was in the Navy 7.5 years altogether. There's a lot of training that goes into being a submarine.
But I think that prepared you for quarantine better than the rest of us have fared. But
yeah, isolation is not foreign to me.
That's true. I thought it was a little premature, but since I traveled 48 weeks last year, I'm like, this would be great. I don't have to travel for a couple of weeks. But I think whether it's your military training or you're just have great leadership background, I know that I really appreciate the urgency in which you helped us deploy, because had we not done it that week, we wouldn't have been able to help our customers. We would have still been figuring it out on our own. And I think a great leader defines reality and gives hope. And none of us knew what was going on there. But I for one, appreciate your leadership, and it's why we're so strong today. I think raises are due next week or something. No.
I'll take that into consideration.
Please do. Please do. So I've got one last question for you, Bill, and then I'm going to ask the same question of Seth and Bill, because I get asked this every day. Real Green's famous for our events, whether it's Strike Marketing Gold. We have a lot of great webinars, and then of course our user conference, which is a cult favorite. And what is the criteria through which you're making decisions about when and where Real Green will participate and our user conference?
Yeah, well, we're certainly going to have a user conference and event. I think the big question we have right now is whether for this year only, is it going to be a virtual event, or is it going to be the traditional event where we bring our customers together? It's a very, very important cultural activity for the business and allows a lot of collaboration amongst our customers and networking and engagement. But the criteria are, well, there's lead time to pivot to a new format if we go down that track. And then we're watching the data very carefully, and none of us have a crystal ball as to what things are going to look like in early January when we traditionally have our users conference. So we're going to make a decision in the next 30 days as to which track we go down. If it winds up being a virtual conference, it'll be a one-time event, this year, and we'll pivot back to our standard format or a hybrid approach in subsequent years. But we're just watching the data, but we've got to make the decision in about 30 days, given the lead time to prepare for the event. So we're working through that process right now. Yeah,
the virtual events take as much time or more to produce, I'm finding, than the live. Not just the content creation, but the way in which we're going to deploy it. So that's going to take some work, but it'll be a great event either way. Yeah. So, landscape management guys, what's your travel plans this year? You host incredible events. I call it a forum where you gather like-minded green industry folks together. You do that usually in November, I think. You have a big presence at GIE. What's your plan for this year?
So yeah, we're sort of in the same boat as far as evaluating what we're doing is, with various events. GIE Expo, as you mentioned, is a big part of the whole industry. It's our national show, and where everybody meets once a year. So, our intention is if that show goes on and all indications are that they're planning to have it, we will attend. We might adjust our booth size and the number of people that we send, but for the most part, if it's happening, we'll be there. We're in Cleveland. Louisville's only about a 5-hour drive away, so we can drive there. We always drive there every year anyway, so it would just be the same thing. There's a sense that a lot is changing every single day, relative to how we handle this. So, possibly by that time we'll know a lot more, and hotels, have a lot to figure out. The convention center has a lot to figure out. 4th Street Live has a lot to figure out, but I know they're meeting probably every minute trying to figure all those details out. From one aspect that was interesting to me, and I've been in a lot of conversations with Warren Sellers and Chris Kaiser over at OPEI, and they sent me, a little breakdown of some of the people that pre-registered. And one of the questions they asked, I have it pulled up here, is, why do you think it's important as business owners to be at GI Expo this year? And a lot of interesting comments. And I was, mentioning this to Beth yesterday when we had our pre-call, there's a little bit of a, rah, rah, rah for our industry. We're a very resilient group. And some of these quotes are, this year has been a challenge, but we need to move forward. We can't stagnate. As an industry, we've been able to overcome so many obstacles over the years. This is just another obstacle. This is a great opportunity for us to showcase our efforts and demonstrate that we can carry on.
Absolutely.
It's time to get the country moving. It's another one. So there's a lot of these comments, from people that have already registered to come to the event. I'm not exactly sure if they're all in Louisville or, but no, honestly, that's it kind of gives you hope that our industry is very resilient and they want to move on. And the fact that the majority of the industry has been considered essential throughout all of this has probably helped in that regard. Our events, we have an event in November for landscape management. We have another one for golfdom in December. And so as of now, those are moving forward. They're not large events. We get about 75 to 100 people at these events. So social distancing shouldn't be too difficult for those events. The things that we need to work out is, how do you have a cocktail reception, or how do you feed everybody? And we thought the golf part of it would be the challenge, but it seems like golf has figured out how to social distance pretty well. So that's actually the easy part. We're working very closely. We have our events at the Reunion Resort in Orlando, and we're working very closely with them, trying to make sure that we figure all this stuff out. Things like, what do we do, in between meetings, to make sure that, the space is clean before the next person comes to the meeting, those sorts of things. So typically we have, shared condo space, where everyone has their own room, but there's a shared living area and kitchen area. Can we still have that, or does everyone need to have their own place? So those are things that we're still trying to work out. But yeah, as of right now, we're in go mode, and we're evaluating it, same thing every day. But in a couple of weeks, we'll have another meeting and see where we're at then. That's kind of our approach.
About all we can
Do you have
do.
anything to add there, Seth?
No, you covered it, Bill. I think go mode is definitely for the LM Growth Summit. One of the benefits that we have is that it is a small event where it is limited attendance. So we've got that going for us. We just got to figure out some of these things. But when we have these meetings, we talk about some of the obstacles. I do feel like it's something that, being here in June, you still just got to wait and not worry so much about what it's going to look like in November, and kind of see, someone else is going to have to dip their toe in the water before we do. So that's nice. So we're just going to observe and see what other people do, see how it goes. And hopefully in another 4 weeks, it's going to be a different story again. I mean, you got to kind of see what's around the corner. You can't see the forest from the trees right now. We're still right there in the forest. So we're looking forward to having another great LM Growth Summit. I'm looking forward to GIE Expo. I miss my colleagues in the industry. And if it looks different, that's fine. I'll play by their rules. You tell me I got to stand over there, I'll stand over there. I got a voice that can carry. I can talk to somebody over a distance. We're excited to get going again. We're excited to get moving again. We've been doing so much in the background with the magazine and talking to so many people, and we are getting that rah attitude from our industry, to where even though we've been confined to our desks and not out in the industry, things are moving. We want to make sure we're out there and keeping up with our readership right now, because that things are moving really fast, and we want to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on. And if that means we got to get to Louisville, we'll be there in Louisville. And for sure, we're excited to getting back down to Reunion Resort in Orlando, because that sounds like a pretty nice spot right now.
Yes, it does. Have you met my friends in the green industry? You think they're really going to socially distance on 4th Street?
Yeah, I have, and it'll be interesting to see what that's like. If there's a band playing and things like that, it's I think it'll last maybe about 5 minutes, maybe one beer, and then it's just going to be chaos, and we're going to look at each other, and we're going to say, okay, we'll try harder tomorrow.
We're all huggers. We hug a lot. I don't know how it's going to work. Personally, I don't know how it's going to work, but I really appreciate the amount of information your publication brought to the industry. At Real Green, we had FAQs every single day, and we had to pivot to learn how to keep them operational and business continuity. But the amount of information that your surveys and how you were turning that back, I follow it every day. Even learning that amidst all the optimism, Q1 for Brightview had a 5% setback. And while that makes sense when we layer that down, but you've done a terrific job both getting information from the trenches and getting it back to the rest of us. What's your assessment today, now that we're at June 5th, of how we fared as an industry and how quickly we got back to business?
Well, Beth, first, thank you for the compliment. We take it very seriously at Landscape Management. It's not just me. I've got a team of editors who work hard every day. It's just Abby Hart, Christina Herrick, Sarah Webb, Danielle Pest is our digital editor. And when the pandemic became a thing, all of us who are journalists, we got into the business for one reason or the other. But at the end of the day, it's because we like to tell stories and we like to communicate with people, and we want to stay up on just what is the topic of the day. And of course, none of us wanted to work on pandemic stories over, day in, day out. That's not why we got into it necessarily, but there is a sense of excitement about it, in that we realized that the stories were very important. It became, I guess, let me put it this way. Bill, we'd love to interview you for the magazine soon. We'll do, would love to learn more about your time in the Navy, and there's that type of story that you can write. You can write those stories, and you could make a nice story there too. But then there's this other type of story where you're talking to people who are like vitally interested in not just their health and their safety and their business, and that just gets your pulse going. That's a different type of reporting. So when the pandemic started breaking out, we kind of had a huddle, and we basically did a pep talk for each other, and we said, hey, this is a serious thing, and we're going to have to really show our readers that we're behind them. We're not, Landscape Management's not going to be on the back end of this thing. We're going to be on the front end of this thing. We want to talk to whoever, just anybody blast it out there. Let's talk to whoever you can get a hold of. And so if on landscapemanagement.net, we just started churning out content. Anyone who got a source on the phone, everyone was a source. And that's something I've said in my column before that was interesting, is that typically something happens. Let's say there's a hurricane that hits New Orleans. You got to try and find someone in New Orleans who's willing to talk to you, who can take the time, get away from the distraction, and say, yeah, I'm on the phone, I got a signal, let's talk. On this one, anyone in the industry was a source, because we wanted to know what it was like in their neck of the woods. Tell us what's going on with you. How's life? How's your business? So that just really was mesmerizing for us. We were just working as fast as we can, trying to keep up. And then to answer the second part of your question about how did the industry fare, I mean, I think undoubtedly this industry fared wonderfully. With apologies to everyone, all the bad things that have happened in America, and people who've gotten sick and whatnot. That's why we had our cover headline on our May issue was the great outdoors. I mean, how long have I been probably sitting on that headline? You know, I mean, but it was so easy to do. It's like we work in the great outdoors. This is an industry that is moving forward, and there's a lot of industries who took it right on the chin, and it was not ours. I mean, I think that we felt blessed to be healthy, and we felt blessed to be in this industry, and we were able to tell those stories. And you know, it was stories of hope too, stories that and they're ongoing, of people who would in their interviews. A lot of times when you're talking to someone and they know it's on the record interview, sometimes they get a little, they might clam up a little bit. You got to get them comfortable first. We had a lot of people being very forthright with us about what it was like to be a business owner, to own a business where they were able to keep their employees working, keep them safe. I heard a great story from an owner who had an employee who just before the pandemic he was a fitness trainer and just became jaded with it, wanted to get outdoors more, and decided to make the leap and to work for a landscaping company. And he was a single father. And he said, this guy came up to him and he said, I don't know what it was exactly that made me change industries, but how blessed am I right now that I'm still working as a single father, when at my old job, you know, I was working with people, you know, face to face in a closed environment. All my old coworkers are shut down right now. So there's a lot of things like that happen that just really kept us moving and kept us motivated. So you know, and we're still in it, but you try every once in a while. I try and take a step back and look at what the team's done, and I'm telling them that, you know, to keep up the good work. They're still churning it out. You know, we're still putting out the magazines. It's interesting because the narrative's changed a little bit. You know, now the new issue we just went to press with on Monday was our LM 150 list, which was also refreshing to just talk about, hey, let's talk about 2019. How good was your year? Now let's talk about 2020. What do you expect? So it's an ongoing, it's like being in the middle of a really, really good novel right now. It's scary at times, and it's very serious, but it's very fascinating at the same time.
I think for a while we had this adrenaline rush, and I think it was Bill, you and I were talking yesterday about how much more productive most of us have been at home, and whether that is the factor of there's nothing else to do, or I had this adrenaline to solve the interesting problems, and if I wasn't working, then I had to worry about my firefighter son. So we all wanted to work. Are you all still remote?
Well, Seth's always remote in Northeast Kansas, so he's been working out of
They
his home.
don't let me. Yeah, they don't want me in Cleveland. I come up there, I bug them. So yeah,
I understand. Yeah.
Trouble. But no, yeah. Our office opened on May 6th on an optional basis, so we probably have half of our staff coming in on a daily basis right now. I have a young daughter at home, so I come in, you know, every other day just so I can help out on the opposite days. But yeah, we're open, and we're pretty lucky in that while our cubicles are more old-fashioned with the high walls and all that, it actually allows us to socially distance. There's only a couple spots in our office where we've had to kind of put tape down on the ground and say, you know, you've got to walk to this side of the tape, or, you know, X'd off areas. So yeah, we're very, very fortunate in that our situation is that we're pretty spread out. We don't have that open office concept that a lot of, you know, companies have, especially larger companies. Our kitchen area where a lot of us eat lunch daily is one of the only areas where we have to, you know, make sure that we're spaced out. You know, we had to take a lot of chairs out of the kitchen and things like that. But yeah, for the most part, it's very easy. And, you know, we're kind of a similar culture to Real Green, where, you know, everybody, you know, are very friendly with each other, and our culture is that we're a team. And so, you know, for us to be together is awesome. You know, everybody, you know, wants to be there, wants to be together. There's still some holdouts, of course, that are, you know, nervous or have, you know, older parents at home or things like that, you know, they're concerned about. So, you know, it's their option that they can continue to work from home if they'd like. And, you know, as Seth mentioned, we're crazy busy, you know, trying to put out our normal magazine plus, you know, cover this topic on top of it. So it's been very interesting for sure, but enlightening as well. It's, as he said, hope is a great word, but also heartening, you know, to see everything and hear the words of, you know, one of the things that we did as as a brand has decided to just start doing Zoom calls and recording them with some of these readers and advertising partners as well. But and you know, some of the stories I told Seth, I'm like, I'm taking notes during these just because the leadership of the people in our industry is unbelievable. You know, Marty Grunder had, you know, Doug Black, the CEO of Site One, on it. It was like that was just gold, you know. And you know, we had a great interview with Zach Strauss or Seth
Strausser.
from Strausser Landscapes. I mean, what he did for his team and for his company is just a blessing. It was amazing. So.
It was interesting to see people pivot so quickly. I loved that issue, The Great Outdoors, because I think that is why consumer sentiment is what it was. Very, very early on, Linda Thomas, our marketing director, had a theme of it's the outdoor living room. You're stuck at home, but you can still go outside. And once we got past the weather elements, Larry Ryan, who I hosted one day, said, Beth, it has been the funnest thing to see customers welcome you, want to see you. It was the sign of normalcy. They want you to take care of the only area they can go out to. And he said, the only problem we're having is kind of the social distancing because they can't wait to talk to the lawn care guy. So we haven't seen that in this industry in a very long time.
And also getting your routes done in time, because normally you can get in on and off a lawn. If you have to stop and talk for 5 minutes to each homeowner, it really adds to your day. I know the guy that does my lawn, he said, yeah, I have to start working Saturdays now because I'm not getting enough stops in a day because everyone wants to talk to me.
That's one side of it. I talked to Kyle Tobin.
Sorry guys, I have to go.
No worries.
I just my child just fell down the stairs, so but I'll
take care of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That happens when we're live at 5, doesn't it? Bill and I are blessed to have grown children, and we haven't had to contend with that. I hope Seth's child is just fine. But one of the opposite side of what you said, Kyle Tobin in Canada said the traffic in Toronto is horrific. His guys, it's not uncommon for them to sit in traffic 2 to 3 hours, and he is so much more efficient. Gas is cheap. So it's been really an unexpected positive outcome for him. Have you talked to others in the industry who are leveraging the disruption, either with new service lines? We heard about some introducing disinfectant, or anything that emerged from this that maybe would not have otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest one that I've heard is the disinfectant line, and even more so in the pest side of the business with that, because they are going inside, you know, restaurants and hospitality areas, and you know, they can do that when they're there for a treatment. A lot of pest control companies don't come inside, you know, homes anymore. Landscapers don't really come inside homes. So it's yes, we've heard of that. Not hugely. I just think in general, you know, people are just super busy. You know, on the lawn care side, as we talked about, you know, customers are at home and they're looking at their yards and they're seeing weeds and you know, bare spots and things like that, and so they're calling. You know, I've talked to a number of, you know, lawn care companies that have, you know, basically said, you know, I'm almost at capacity and it's only June 1st, you know, and normally I don't have that situation until August or September. So it's like, wow, that's pretty amazing, you know. And of course we're all like, why don't you just hire more people? But you know, it's not as easy as that, as you know. And then, as you said, you know, the backyard is, you know, has become, you know, a vacation spot for people now. So a lot of people are trying to, you know, add decks or patios or fire pits or things like that. And, you know, in fact, my own wife is, you know, trying to get quotes and she can't even get calls back because they're so busy. So it's so busy. And I think, you know, some companies came into the year with a backlog too, because last year was so busy as well. I mean, it was a great year. So yeah, other than that, I really haven't heard any specifics. I don't know if you've heard of any others that I might not have.
No, just some new best practices, staggering shifts, assigning equipment that you don't trade out. Some best practices that I think will stick around long after this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Best practices, a lot, tons of changes relative to best practices in terms of, you know, having their safety meetings outside versus in the shop, or moving their time clock outside versus in the shop, things like that, like, these are in general things that maybe we could have done to even be a little bit more efficient anyway. And a lot of companies are saying, maybe I don't need an office anymore. I'm seeing that, my office administrative staff can work just as effectively, if not more so, from their homes. So, why am I paying for this building? That sort of thing. So there's a lot of that happening too.
We've seen on a customer facing role, we offer a customer assistant portal where consumers can self-serve, and we had some adoption, but the paperless push, and while they were transitioning to getting folks at home, we had a higher adoption of those tools, and I don't think that will revert. Once, as a consumer, you start paying your bill online, you're not going to revert back to that or calling the office. So that's worked out well for us. You mentioned hiring folks. Are you hearing from any of the companies you speak with that the workforce availability is a positive trend?
Yeah, for sure. One particular interview that we had with a company down in Alabama, she said she, lost some people because, for whatever reason, they had to stay home with their kids, or they have a, elderly parent, they, didn't feel safe coming in or whatever. And she said she had to hire 6 new employees this spring, and in a quick time frame, in a couple 2-3 week period. And she said every single one of them came from the restaurant industry. So, those jobs freed up, and people wanted to work. And you hear these stories about, oh, these people aren't coming back to work because they're making more money on unemployment and this and that. But I think in general, most people want to work. They want a job. And so, to Seth's point about this guy that left the fitness industry, a lot of people who probably looked at the landscape and lawn care industry as a very challenging industry. You got to work outside in 90-degree weather and blah, 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 blah. Now we're probably looking at it saying, hey, it's a safe industry. There's actually, some job security here for us.
Tim Portland, the CEO of Yellowstone's a good friend of mine, my former boss, but he and I had a conversation about the H-2B visa issue and how he works very hard with NALP to ensure we get enough laborers from Mexico. And I'm wondering if now that trend will reverse too. We had difficulty getting them into the country. Perhaps we won't need as many this year.
Yeah, for sure. And frankly, I think that trend has been changing over the years anyway, just because government hasn't been approving, all the workers that have been needed anyway. So a lot of people have been trying to figure out ways to get around that, or at least reduce the percentage of H-2B workers they have in their force. I know some companies, had as much as 40-50% of their, in-season workers as H-2B, and that's just way too many. If they can keep that, below 20 or even below 10 is probably a better best practice for them. And you started to see that anyway, but yeah, I would think for sure that will continue.
Just a couple more questions for you. Oh, Seth, everything good there?
Yeah, sorry about that. My daughter fell down. My daughter found down the stairs, and I heard I don't know if you guys could hear, but there's a loud crash, and I ran out. I was like, something fell, and I get to the staircase, and my daughter's laying on her back. She just fell down the stairs, and so she kind of looks at me. Her glasses are laying there, and I said, "Are you okay?" So I walked. She doesn't know. She just missed a stair or something, and so she's sitting down eating breakfast now. She's acting absolutely normal, but I just thought I'd pop on real quick, let you guys know.
Yeah, no worries.
Let you know that everything seems fine. Yeah, sorry, that was spooky. It was crazy. Sorry.
No worries. Let me take you guys back to March 1st, before we thought this was going to be a thing. What did you have on tap from a content creation for the rest of the year? What were the trending topics going to be that you were going to focus on, or that you'll still focus on outside of COVID?
Well, it's funny, we create an editorial calendar every year so people kind of know what we're doing, and we have our 4 buckets that we always follow, and there's certain topics. And the pandemic did throw us for a loop in terms of maybe cover stories, or at least for 3 issues. But really, we've covered the same things that we've always been wanting to cover because, regardless, like someone told me, the grass is still going to grow, whether there's a virus or not. We have, while maybe some of our feature stories have all either been about the pandemic or had pandemic elements in them. Like, for example, the LM150 list, you couldn't just talk to these companies without asking about how are you adjusting? But really, other than that, we still have all of our main topics. We've stuck to them because we feel like our readers need that. They want to get what's going on with the pandemic, and then okay, what do I need to know about plant growth regulators? What's going on with tracks versus tires? What's going on with tips for getting the most out of my chainsaw, just whatever. We feel like we can't abandon that. We still gotta, we know where our bread is buttered. We know what our magazine's supposed to be about. And it's about that still with the pandemic as well.
Yeah, it was one of the hardest things I think for us was, there's a little bit of a lag between the time that we send our issue to the printer and the time it actually gets, it hits people's mailboxes, and things were changing so rapidly that we were like, well, we hope this is still relevant by the time they get this issue, because, they're, especially the first time where we covered it in our April cover story, and it's like, that tag or that head for that one was, the new normal. And, we were like, will that even still be the new normal by then? At that point, people really weren't wearing masks and stuff like that yet. So we had a person on the cover that didn't have a mask on, or any gloves or any of that. But so yeah, that was definitely partially in the back of our minds. But how the heck could we can't tell the future. We're not soothsayers.
Yeah.
Do you have anything on tap for AI? I saw Frank Mariani talk about his autonomous mowing, which that industry has really leapfrogged since I last looked at it, and has some interesting applicability with social distancing or FBI buildings where they don't want any additional workers there. Are you going to look at that this year?
Yeah, that's coming up. I think we have some of the content on that topic coming out in the fall. It's because it's something new technologies is something that we're very interested in. We want to be at the forefront of that, even if it, I do think that there's a lot to be said for that niche. And what Bill was saying earlier about how a bunch of people really had to adopt what was going with the paperless, with Real Green. And I think, there's a lot of people, if they were dipping their toe in the water now, the water felt cold, but now there was a whole pack of hornets chasing them, they're going to jump in a lot faster. So that's something to be considered that we will keep reporting on, just because I do think things like that have a lot of relevancy, pandemic or not.
Yeah, technology is definitely changing the green industry. That's why we have you guys here today.
Yeah, and certainly, as companies like Mariani Landscapes, which is the largest privately held company in the country, start adopting this, and I know a lot of other companies are testing it. It will become, I think a lot of people haven't looked at it because they're sort of waiting to see how other people do it. They're not sure, but if you get a few early adopters that are having success with it, it'll take off. If you would ask me last year, or for sure in 2018, I'd say, oh, we're still 5-6 years away, but I don't think that's the scenario anymore.
No, I'm going to have Jennifer Lemke, the CEO of Weedman, on June 16th. Mark your calendars. She's the queen, but they've been pretty successful with autonomous mowing of late.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a little while. And then there's a company here in the Cleveland market that seems to be doing pretty well, called Robin Autopilot, and I think they're doing pretty well as well. So that they've expanded, they've moved out of some of the other businesses that they were doing and things like that. So it's kind of interesting to see.
Seth, related but different, golfdom. So you have a long history in the golf industry. How's that industry faring?
That industry, like our industry, has been very interesting. There's a lot going on there. I'd say one of the biggest difference is, in terms of taking care of the asset of the golf course, most states were allowing it. There were a few states that shut down all maintenance. For example, Minnesota got shut down. The good news for them was they were mostly under snow cover at the time. They were still experiencing winter, so it wasn't setting them. It wasn't urgent, I guess you could say, at that point that they get out there. But the thing that's been troublesome for golf is that clubhouses had to be shut down. The food and beverage was shut down. Any weddings, if it was a country club or any place that had a reception area, that part was shut down. So while the golf course itself and that asset of the golf course and the game is open and doing tremendous, there a lot of people want to get outside and play some golf right now. So the game itself is doing great, but there is some things in the background that are not related directly to the actual play in the game that is troublesome for the industry, and that they've lost some revenue based on having their clubhouse operation shut down, entertainment, things like that. So, but it's been a unique market to watch as well. And I do think that the silver lining there is a lot of people, talk about a sport that just really embraces social distancing. You can stand far apart. You're going to be apart from each other the whole time. You don't share any of the same equipment. You don't have to touch, there's no touching of, any, if you don't touch the flag stick anymore, there's nothing that you play your own ball. What other sport is like that? You can't do that in tennis. You can't do that in basketball. You can't do that in football. You can't do it in ping pong. I can't even think of, what sport you don't usually share equipment with. But a lot of golf being played, where the weather's been nice and they've been jamming. And so the golf course superintendents are as busy as ever. Some of their crews have been limited in size, and they've had to figure out how to maybe keep their crew distant and, no break room indoors. Everybody has their own cart, things like that. But they've been figuring it out as well. And the golf course superintendents, they're a resilient bunch as well. They really, they've seen some curveballs thrown at them, and each time they know how to get out of a jam. And it'll be, I think, as we get through the year and things open up again, hopefully some of that revenue comes back, and any postponed weddings get to come back. Hopefully the pandemic didn't break any engagement plans, if you know what I mean. So we'll get those people back in there.
And there's a lot, if you're a sports addict like I am, there's a lot of white space on the sports calendar. So you're not watching baseball. You've got more time to go do it. And golf is one of those sports. I haven't done it in 10 years, but I could go out and play a decent round. So that makes it a resilient sport.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, when Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, Phil Mickelson had that match on, that was the highest rated cable golf outing of all time. So they did very well with that. People, and it was entertaining. It was good entertainment. I watched it. I'm a sports nut, and but I love watching golf as well. And so I was looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more golf on TV. And I also think that PGA Tour is going to have an advantage of getting some live broadcasts in soon. And I think that it's going to do very well for them, that they'll get some new fans based on just people hungry to watch something besides, whatever it is that, I can't watch replays of old games at this point anymore. Yeah. They're showing old tournaments I already know. It's like, it just doesn't have the same thing. I need that unknown.
Be live. Yeah.
I agree. Well, you all are well respected and well connected, and that's why people pick up the phone when you ask them what's going on in their neck of the woods. I appreciate you spending time with us today. Bill, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just want to reiterate how fortunate we all are to be in this industry. And, I have colleagues. I've been a vertical software guy my whole life, and I have colleagues in other industries that literally went out of business in a matter of weeks. And we're very fortunate. Our customers are incredibly resilient and tough, and just happy to be here. And thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today.
And we'll see each other.
Thank you so much for having us.
4th Street Live, right, Seth? We're going to make it to 4th Street Live. Just live about 4th Street Live and football, because I have to believe that there's going to be a football season. That's what gets me through the day.
And maybe we could start traveling again too. I know being cooped up isn't the most fun thing in the world for people who travel a lot.
But thank God for technology. It was nice to see all your faces today.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Zoom
thanks,
is here
guys.
to stay.
Bill.
Stay in
All right.
touch.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great weekend.
You too.
Bye.